We often use the term legacy in sports and specifically here in college football. Gary Patterson left a legacy at TCU. Make no mistake about that. That is truly a legacy that Gary Patterson left behind in Dallas-Fort Worth. We will talk coaching carousel in college football right here at the Voice of College Football. Scott Frost, he hit the podium on Monday, as did Dan Mullen at Florida and others across the country with jobs at USC, LSU, Texas Tech, and now TCU open. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on the eve of the first release of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's rankings. The very first rankings to be released, and oh, the intrigue, oh, the speculation, and oh, the controversy that will ensue regardless of their selections 2 through 7. Great to see everybody here at the Voice of College Football on a Monday night, late night. Many of you probably watched the Chiefs and the Giants. Maybe we should have Patrick Mahomes, his recommendation for a new Texas Tech head coach. Mahomes and the Chiefs get it done late with a late field goal against Daniel Jones and the Giants. And Chris Jones. Does anyone in the chat know where Chris Jones played college football? He was a good one in the SEC. And he got the final couple of quarterback pressures and sacks to wrap it up for the Chiefs. So we're going to address the coaching situation at a number of schools. We're also going to look at the college football playoff rankings and what they could be, what they should be, and what they definitely should not be. And, of course, taking your comments and your questions. And we've got the phone lines open here at 860-499-3332. Before we get started, would like to remind everyone that you can join us at our Voice of College Football community on Patreon. I kind of like those numbers that we posted over the weekend, huh? 13-5 against the spread. Woo! Those are all top 25 games. 13-5 against the spread. We've been well over 50% every week. So we've been consistent, not up, down, up, down. And the last several weeks, every week over 60% against the spread. 107-69. That'll make you some change for sure against the spread. And somebody asked me the other day, money line. Mark, what are you against the money line straight up? Top 25 games. So I don't go out there and necessarily choose the easiest games to predict for sure. And against the money line, 134-44. I've not done the percentages on that, but that should be 76, 77, 78%, something in that range, 134-44. So join us on Patreon. Just go to any of the description sections for any of the videos, and you will find the link to Patreon, or just go to Patreon and search MarkRogersTV. Also, if you would like to write for us, we have one writer on board, and we appreciate Keith being with us. I posted that article to Facebook, Twitter, and also here on the main YouTube channel to the community page, so check it out. And Keith is going to post an article each and every Tuesday for all of you at voiceofcollegefootball.com. So check out his work, and if you'd like to write for us, contact me by going to voiceofcollegefootball.com and go to the top of the screen where it says write for us. And you guys know the deal. Christmas is coming. You're going to be on Amazon. And I know as soon as I say that, because it happens every time, somebody will say, I don't shop on Amazon. This is not for you. Anybody else who shops on Amazon. Half the country every month. That is the most amazing stat I've heard this year. Half the country every month shops on Amazon. go to the Amazon link that we provide in the description section of the videos. Same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. Why not? Help us grow the channel, build the channel. We want to be here next year. We want to be here the year after talking college football with you. We don't want to have to go do something else. So any way you can support the channel, we would appreciate it. Go to any of the team channels. So I'm often curious when we're on the main channel, how many people I'm talking to that have no idea that we have team channels. 25 team channels. I think that's the latest count. So we probably have your favorite team covered. Probably. So we've got team channels. And even if you don't like a particular team, or maybe you've already got your team locked down, you've already subscribed to your team channel. Let's say you're a Florida fan, you've already subscribed to that. Thank you so much for that first. But look at any of the team channels that are under 1,000 and please subscribe. Iowa, Alabama are close. The Iowa channel, a ton of great content we provide on a regular basis on the Iowa channel, courtesy Corey Breda. Corey would kill me if he heard me pronounce his last name that way. Corey Breda, and Coach Don Patterson do the post game, and I also appear on there myself on the Iowa channel. But any of the channels under 1,000 subs, please help us out. And I had my speech all lined up, not literally, but at least in my head, on Gary Patterson stepping down at TCU or being basically forced out and asked to finish out the season and deciding, hey, nope, if you're going to fire me, I'm done. I'm done right now. And he has every right to do that. So Gary Patterson out at TCU. Jerry Kill, the former Minnesota head coach, will take over the Horned Frogs for the rest of the season, coming off a 31-12 loss against Kansas State. I was actually going to present my soliloquy on Gary Patterson and then look at Dan Mullen and then look at Scott Frost, but we've already got phone calls lined up. So why do I prepare anything? Not that I really prepared, but I did get mentally prepared to pontificate on Gary Patterson, Dan Mullen, and Scott Frost. But let's get to the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is DeAndre.
Hey, DeAndre.
Hey, man, everybody out there needs to subscribe to your Patreon. It helped me out a lot this weekend. I didn't only tell, well, I don't know if you covered, I've heard the show Saturday, but you had a lot of call-ins like you usually do, so I couldn't get on, but I did only wait. I wish I would listen to you on that Baylor game, but I took Texas, and I wish I would have bet on that would have get you against that Wake Forest game, like 15.5, but I don't think I betted on the game. I wish I would have went the other way.
I missed the Wake Forest game.
I think you should.
I missed that one. I took Duke in those.
I wish I would have went the other way.
Yeah. Sorry about that one. Yeah. I can't get them all. We'll go with 13-5 against the spread. I'm happy with that this week. But DeAndre, as well as I know, that you can't get too puffed up about a prediction record, because the next week is always coming, and it's tough to keep it up. That's for sure.
Now, what I couldn't understand, why did you pick West Virginia over
Iowa State?
Why did you pick Iowa State over West Virginia?
I just,
why did you go that direction?
Man, West Virginia's not been playing well, and Iowa State was coming off. Now, the one thing that I started kicking myself about once we got into that game and I saw West Virginia was staying close and it was pretty much a one score or a tie game the whole way, I was thinking, yeah, I probably should have figured Iowa State's coming off a huge win against Oklahoma State. Now they're going on the road, but I still just, I have a lot more faith in Iowa State, obviously, and their veteran team. And, they were supposed to be much better than they are. And I thought that maybe they were pulling it together. after beating. I've got some respect for Oklahoma State. I think they're a good team, and Iowa State just obviously just beat them last week. And West Virginia has not been good. They've lost some bad, ugly games.
Yeah, and that's what I was. That's what I figured out too. But you know, I had a very good weekend. I made some money off of it, and you know, like I said, sometimes I get caught up in doing my little parlay bets, and that's probably a lot of my problem. I'm working on it, Mark. I'm working on it. But sometimes when you hit big, it's just big, and you can't make it. It's just a habit. But you know, Mark, I was watching the NFL today, and over the weekend. I don't know if you remember Clemson, not Clemson, but Pittsburgh and New England, probably the first Patriots Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
The Patriots beat Pittsburgh like what, 17-14 or 21-14. And they didn't
24-17, I think, was the score of the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh in 2001.
Yeah.
I think it was 24-17. The game Troy Brown had a great game.
Yeah, and they didn't score 9 offensive touchdowns outside of the touchdown Bledsoe threw. So the reason why I bring that up, I just think the next year, New England and Pittsburgh play the first game of the year. And New England spreads Pittsburgh out, and they just start throwing little short passes. Just, you know, no huddle, short little passes, just keep Pittsburgh. And next week, I think they play the Bengals or somebody. They do the exact same thing. And next week, Pittsburgh goes on this 3-game losing streak. So I watched Kansas City and the Giants tonight. And I was looking at how much trouble Patrick Mahomes was having. And if you go back to the Rams and the Giants, when they lost to the who did the Giants lose to? Giants beat Buffalo back in the day. Sometimes people just figure you out. And I was thinking about Clemson. Sometimes people just figure out. It's like Ohio State figured Clemson out. Hey, and I think Notre Dame did it too. Not the ball early because they look over to the sideline late. And, you know, you can run the ball. I think Carolina did it sort of about a year or two ago. Just snap the ball early and just run the ball on them. Or get the playoff while they're looking over to the sideline. And I think sometimes people just figure out. And I think that's what happened with Clemson offense. People just figured them out. And I think Clemson played a lot better this past weekend. That was a crazy game. I mean, the punter, the kicker who's been Potter, who's been kicking for the last, about 4 years, he missed 3 kicks. He's never done that before. And you know, that run in for a touchdown by that receiver, a sack fumble. You know, Clemson ended up winning the game, but however, you know, I just think people figure Clemson out. And I think that's what happens in college football a lot of time, or football period. People just catch up with you. I know people want to say, well, did anybody catch up with Nick Saban and Alabama? And I would say yes, because Alabama had to change how they were playing when they ran up against Deshaun Watson. And also they went to more of a spread and, you know, throw the ball down the field. Sometimes football, people just catch up with you. And the NFL is a perfect example of that. And what you're saying with Clemson is a perfect example of that. Sometimes people just catch up with you and figure you out.
You know, DeAndre, we saw that this Saturday, Michigan State. Mike McDonald's the defensive coordinator for Michigan, and he just came from the Baltimore Ravens. And Michigan State was running plays before he could get his personnel groupings set. And he was trying to change personnel groupings used to the NFL rule, not used to the college rule. And Michigan got caught 4 or 5 times with not the right personnel on the field or not ready for the play.
Right. Yeah, and you know, and that's what happens is people figure out. I was real shocked about that game. I know you had picked I heard what you said, that you wish you would have had I guess you have picked the wrong. You have put it up there wrong. You have picked Michigan State to win the game, or you took the 4 points. But yeah, that game was shocking to me. So when I saw the score that Michigan was up 30-14, I just thought that Michigan State was going to get ran away with the. I honestly thought Michigan was going to run away with the game because it's like Michigan State has this bunch of cast-offs and young freshmen on their team, and nobody is expecting them to beat Michigan. And when I say nobody expecting them to beat Michigan, it's just that Michigan was so much more developed team because they have been recruiting these players for the last 4 years and have been there for 3 or 4 years with Jim Harbaugh's system, and they ended up losing the game 34-30. And I just can't figure out Michigan State just how they're doing it. I mean, they outside of the kid that's at Wake Forest, I think Walker had signed with Louisville. Then Louisville pulled the scholarship, and then he ended up at Wake Forest, and he went off from Wake Forest, off from Louisville at Wake Forest, and then he transferred at the Michigan State. So, I really never paid attention to him, but it's just that they're doing this with a bunch of cast-offs. And I'm just really, really shocked on how much we're seeing these teams just like Michigan State win like that. With this players just come out of nowhere and they couldn't play at their regular schools.
Well, Kenneth Walker was a pretty decent back at Wake Forest, but yeah, nothing close to what we've seen this year.
Right. And Mark, do you think, and we had this question, I asked you this question before, do you think, I'm not saying anything wrong with Vegas because they're still winning. I mean, they always win, but there's just some odd games where, like, you're like, why are they taking, like, I think we talked about this, I think with Michigan State Northwestern. And Northwestern didn't look good that first game, and then Michigan State did. And then Michigan State was the underdog. And I was like, well, Michigan State beat them guys last year. Do you think Vegas is kind of off for some of the games? There was another game that I saw, and it was something weird about the game. And it was like, why did Vegas pick that team to win on the road? I can't think of it right off the top of my head. It just seemed like the betting, like, you can obviously pick games that, like you said, if you know a team's going to win. I give you an example. Tennessee and Indiana yesterday, Indianapolis. It's like Vegas picked Indianapolis to win that game. I know Indianapolis is better than what their record is, but it's like Tennessee, obviously, at the time, has a better team. And I put money on the money line for Tennessee and Pittsburgh to win, but I also put some money on the Eagles to win. So I did a combination parlay bet, which you told me to stop doing, but I did it anyway. And I was like, wow, look how much money I would have won if I just did those games individually with Tennessee and Pittsburgh as underdogs. But there's just been some games that you just like, wow, like, why are they going that direction? I wish that there was a real good one that we all was like, wow, that's kind of crazy that Vegas is actually picking the team to win that much, and then that team just absolutely got destroyed. I wish I could remember the game. Oh my God, it's slipping my mind. It's like this weekend, Fresno State and San Diego State. I know it's just a 1-point favorite, but I'm just sitting there looking at it. I'm like, hey, I know San Diego State was having a good year, but they've really, really been terrible on offense. I think your boy have pointed that out too, and I was like, wow. I cannot believe that they're picking them to win. I think it might have been Syracuse and Rutgers was another one. Just feel like Vegas has been off with a lot of games this year. That you could, if you were to put money on the money line, you really won big this year. It's like obviously they will win. I think NC State and Mississippi State. I think you picked that one too, that Mississippi State game.
Yep.
And I had went the other way opposite of you. But there was just a couple games in there. I'm just like, if I could figure it out, I'm gonna tweet you what I saw. And I'm like, I just wonder why Vegas did it that way this year. There was just a bunch of games that just like, oh my God, I just can't believe they picked that game that way. Yeah, I wish I would next year when football season come along, I'm gonna go along with my gut instead of always picking the obvious choice. Yeah. Yeah, Mark, but thank you. And everybody need to go out there and get with that Patreon, especially the betting lines, because Mark's been on point, man. I think the last 2 or 3 weeks, you done hit everything correctly. And I just think you do a great job. And everybody else need to, get in there. I mean, you watch more, you got more, I don't know. I know you don't work at your old spot anymore, but you do a lot better job of picking games than I do. If I don't have time or the connections that you do to know what's going on. And then, Purdue and Nebraska. It was like, why are they picking
Bam.
Nebraska?
That's the one, DeAndre.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? I mean, if I had enough, if I was, and the state of North Carolina don't let you gamble, but if I was somewhere else and I could go up there and put $10,000 in without getting in trouble, I would have bet on that game, man. Cause I bet on a parlay, and I think that West Virginia and Iowa State game got me. I wish I wouldn't have done it and listened to your advice on that one and put the money down just straight on Purdue. Yeah, that was like, I couldn't figure that game out. I was like, why are they taking on? I know they said, they try to get even money. That's why they do it. Why they might raise it on the other side so much because they're trying to get even money. But I couldn't understand that to save my life, man.
And the spread was 7.5.
Why they have
7.5. I could not believe that myself. I posted a video on the FPI, which is pretty similar from what I understand to the Vegas odds. And I'm looking at the sheet that I put together, and basically the games that I pinpointed were the games that came through that I highly questioned the point spread and the FPI. And that was the first and foremost one right there, that the FPI was giving Nebraska a 75% chance of winning that game. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I seen Nebraska play Illinois and a couple of other teams, and they played Oklahoma tight, but I just couldn't understand why there was. I mean, and the people out there that bet and gamble, I know Mark, gives advice and don't blame him if he loses, because you shouldn't be betting if he's scared to lose money. But however, if y'all listen to what Mark has to say, I mean, that's pretty good. And I could tell you by my own experiences, I done hit a lot. And if I would start doing parlay bets, I probably would have won a lot more money than what I did. But I personally couldn't figure out why they picked those games. I mean, I couldn't figure that one out to save my life. And that's why I said, it just seems like Vegas has been kind of odd this year with some of them picks. I can't remember what other game was. It was like, obviously, that this team. I know Michigan State and Purdue, Michigan State and Michigan State Northwestern, and that particular game, because Hunter Johnson just the transfer for Clemson, just didn't look good. But yeah, but that one just baffled me to the fullest. Like, man, a 7.5. Like, nobody saw Oregon beating Ohio State, but that game was just so obvious. I just couldn't figure out why Vegas put that direction. And I just couldn't. I just couldn't say. I couldn't understand it to save my life. But yeah, that's the only thing I would say is that Oklahoma. I think that Oklahoma game, or the Oklahoma State and West Virginia game, and you say you went 13-5. I know you lost to Oklahoma State, Michigan, and the Duke game. What other 2 games did you lose on?
I don't have them right in front of me, but yeah, 13-5 against the spread.
I thought you did better than that. I thought you.
No, I'll take 13-5.
I thought you 13-5. I thought you did better than that. To be honest with you, I mean, like I said, if y'all out there betting, man, please go check out Mark. Subscribe to Patreon, man, because that was pretty much spot on. I mean, I was scared of the Auburn Ole Miss game, but I didn't know Ole Miss quarterback was hurt, and then you can never tell.
Well, DeAndre, I'm going to move on to some of these other calls.
Okay. All right, Mark.
I appreciate you calling, DeAndre. Thank you so much, man. I always appreciate it. You have a good night.
Yes, sir.
All right. I appreciate everybody waiting on the line. I want to hit a couple things here real quick. First of all, thank you so much for the super chat, Justin Burr. Great year for college football. Love your channel, Mark. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that so much. Also, we've got a super chat I would like to recognize coming in from Dave. Dave Valensky. Whatever happened to the gopher hole? Did he leave YouTube? I haven't seen him post any videos in a while. Okay. Would that be a question directed toward me? I can't say that I keep track of the gopher hole. I really don't know what that is. I understand that it's a Minnesota YouTube channel, but I've never seen it. Don't know that individual unless I'm missing something. We have on Daniel House. He's the Gopher Guru. Daniel joins us when we talk Minnesota football. We used to have on Ryan. Can't think of his name. He's with 247 Sports. And we used to have Ryan on. He does a nice job. And Daniel House. But in terms of Gopher Hole, sorry that you super chatted me $5 there, Dave, and I can't answer your question. I am the last person to ask about what happens with other people's YouTube channels. I really am tunnel visioned on mine. All right, let's get to the next call. But before we do, real quick, listen to some of these. And I was going to run these down with DeAndre, but I wanted to move on to these other calls since we've got 3 people waiting. The FPI, I understand that there are upsets, of course, in college football, but it's the percentages that get to me. These wild percentages, these overconfident percentages on some of these games, I just don't get. They had Pitt over Miami, 80%. 80%. I flagged that immediately. It was like, now I picked Pitt to win the game too, but I certainly thought about picking Miami. I did easily take Miami with the 9.5 points. Didn't even think about it. I'll take those 9.5 points. 80%. Georgia Tech, 61% over Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech won the game. 61%. That was a toss-up. That game was a toss-up. Iowa State, 70+% against West Virginia. Okay. Arizona State. Some of you may have missed the score on this game. Arizona State was blasted at home against Washington State. The Football Power Index had Arizona State as an 87% probability to win that game. 87%. I flagged that immediately. Not that they shouldn't have been a favorite. I thought Arizona State was better than Washington State as well, and they were at home. But 60, 62%, 87%. That Nebraska-Purdue FPI probability was completely out of whack, screwed up. I don't know what they're looking at with some of these. And then Michigan was at 56% on the road. Iowa over Wisconsin. Iowa was at 54% at Wisconsin. We saw what happened in that game. Texas over Baylor. Okay, it was only 54%, but the game was on the road. I just don't know. Virginia was on the road at BYU. I consider Virginia BYU basically a toss-up game, and the game was at BYU, difficult place to play. Virginia coming all the way across the country, and Virginia was a 53% choice by the FPI. Out of line, and that's why they continue to miss it. Now, the only thing I need to figure out if I want to pour some time into analyzing the FPI and producing these videos is kind of how I break down the analysis of how good the FPI is. Because, of course, everything over 90% is pretty much a give me. So they went 3-0 in their picks of 90+% probability, but those are always, aside from Penn State and Illinois a couple weeks ago, those are gimmies. But everything at 50 to 90%, I don't know that they're doing such a great job. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, this is Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah.
I was curious, with the firing of Gary Patterson as his name. I think that LSU would be a perfect fit for Patterson. His personality and the way he operates the team is very defensive oriented. I was wondering if you ever thought about Patterson to LSU making a lot of sense.
I used to be, and to a certain extent still am, a big Gary Patterson fan. When I have produced videos in the past ranking coaches nationally or in the Big 12, many times I ranked Gary Patterson as the best coach in the Big 12, even when he did not have the best team. So I have just tons of respect for what Gary Patterson built at TCU. If I'm LSU, though, I'm looking at Gary Patterson, and I think that he's lost his fastball. I just don't think that he's necessarily at the peak of his career. I think he's still extremely knowledgeable, a tremendous leader, organizer, all those things. And I might be wrong. Mac Brown certainly is, by most accounts, doing a nice job at North Carolina, and some older coaches can continue to coach, of course. Nick Saban at Alabama. And I certainly don't want to be discriminatory toward the aged. I'm getting there myself, but I just think Gary Patterson's probably past his prime. I would not be in the Gary Patterson running if I was LSU. Now, if Gary Patterson went to LSU, would I be surprised if he won big at LSU? No, I just think that there are better candidates.
Got you. I still see what you're saying. You thinking more if he retires, or maybe he goes down to a coordinator role or something, or he goes down to the group of five?
I can't imagine that Gary Patterson's going to be a coordinator working for somebody else anywhere. He's accomplished too much, and coordinators work too hard. I don't see him doing that.
Gotcha. I guess I didn't really think about coordinators. Actually, they do a lot of recruiting and all that. Like head coaches sometimes take a more of a backseat approach to it. I also want to touch on something else. The Longhorns have just been spiraling out of control lately, and a lot of the Fairweather fans and all that we're all trying to call for Starks to get fired because they think Tom Herman would have done better with this team. And I'm just like, these people have like short-term memory loss or something. I don't know what you think about that. It's just like, I don't know. This team has pretty glaring holes, and you said before the season started that the Longhorns had huge holes in recruiting, and you called that at the beginning of the season. So I mean, you were right all along with Stark having to need to get some recruiting classes under his belt before he can turn the team around. I was wondering what your oversight this far in the season is.
Well, to criticize Steve Sarkisian for close losses against really good teams in his first 8 games at Texas versus what's going on with Scott Frost in his fourth year at Nebraska. Those are completely different circumstances in regards to at what point do you look at a situation and say, this coach has his team in position to win, they're just not getting the job done, versus, okay, we've been watching this for a few years now. This is almost like Scott Frost's first year at Nebraska when he posted a really bad record at 4-8, but they took Ohio State to the last drive. They took a top 15 Iowa team to the last second. And there was there were signs of improvement. This is similar with Texas. To even talk about firing Steve Sarkisian after 8 games, a team in which I know that this doesn't, there are no moral victories, and this isn't good enough at Texas. I get it, but it's his first season, not his third season, where they still were right there and outplaying Texas. They were outplaying Oklahoma State. You know, there was one bad read and bad decision by Casey Thompson in that Oklahoma State game where they were up. Let me get the score straight. It was 17-3. They were close to going up 24-3. Hit the ball in the red zone at the 15-yard line against Oklahoma State to go up 24-3 before half. Casey Thompson doesn't see the guy breaking on the ball, makes a bad read, bad decision. It's a pick six, and suddenly it's a ball game 17-10, and they lose. So those aren't good things in blowing these leads, but we're 8 games into the first season. People need to back off. When you step in as a new coach, you're basically building relationships with all these people. You've got 100 players. You've got to build some level of relationship with all of them. Your coaches have to build relationships. Typically, you have different terminology. You have different plays. You have a different scheme on both offense and defense to implement. You have all these things to do, and you just do things differently, and the players have to get used to the way you do things, and it takes time. Yeah, Texas fans need to back off. They can't blame Steve Sarkisian for the previous failures. He had nothing to do with that. So I know that their frustration is mounting based on Charlie Strong and Tom Herman, but they can't heap that on Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, it irks me every single time I hear this ridiculous fans just they have no idea what they're talking about, and they're putting undue pressure on the players and the coaching staff to do something that's just not possible. Sarkisian's not going to win the national championship with the team he had. It doesn't matter if Nick Saban was the coach. It doesn't matter if Kirby Smart was the coach. It doesn't matter if the greatest coach of all time was coaching the team. They're not going to do that, but people don't really figure that out.
People underestimate how important the offensive line is, and their offensive line at Texas is not good at all. It's just substandard. It's not even. It's one of the worst offensive lines, even in the Big 12. It's an offensive line that you would see at Kansas State or somewhere, and maybe Kansas State's got a better offensive line. I'm just randomly selecting a school that would be more in the top 50 range rather than should be gunning for the top 10. And so, shoot, I've heard NFL general managers say the 2 things that they look at when evaluating a football team from season to season is the quarterback back, and how healthy is the offensive line, and are these guys coming back, and how good is the offensive line? And Texas is just, when you brought up at the beginning of the phone call about the uneven recruiting, the recruiting rankings have been good at Texas, but they've stockpiled certain positions, and other positions have gone woefully under recruited, and that's position number 1.
Yeah, Sarkisian started the season and we're saying that this team had glaring holes, and that he was going to try and like work through them, but he basically kind of alluded to that the season may not be what you guys all think it's going to be. It's Big 12 championship or bust. We came close to a lot of these games, but I think just the whole of the team he can only coach so much. You can see the improvements in the team from last year to this year. Our best player is the only person he was able to bring in this season, which was Worthy. That's the best player on the team. So, next season, I think it's going to be a big jump. Like Mel Tucker last year, I think had a terrible team. And this year, they're undefeated. They beat Michigan. Dave Aranda at Baylor was 2-7 last year. And now he's 1-loss team. Nick Saban in his first year went 7-6. I just think people just tend to want the timetable to be as fast as possible once it's not realistic. That's all I wanted to say. Nice show.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for calling, and have a good night.
Thanks.
All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football. But first of all, thank you so much, DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk, for the super chat. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this evening, Mark?
There he is. How you been, Kevin?
Pretty good, pretty good. Just wanted 2 points. One was in reference to dominoes and power brokers. As far as the domino part of it, Mark, would be in reference to not as much as when or where Franklin as well as Tucker will be the next head coach as far as next year, but more so as in who will be the next coaches at Michigan State as well as Penn State. And on the power broker side, it's more so as in those assistant coaches that are crackerjack recruiters. Dante Williams, which is the interim coach at USC. Then there's 2 guys at A&M, Texas A&M. One guy, I can't recall his name, but the only one I can, off the top of my head, would be Damon Craig. And then as far as one of those bucknuts, as far as Brian Hartline. And I think when it's all said and done, as far as 2 of those 3 assistant coaches are going to have to be paid a king's ransom in order to stay at those particular institutions. Because some of those schools, and I forgot as far as the quartet at LSU, as far as the Falks as well as Corey Raymond. Because I think as far as at LSU as well as USC, if they're not paid a king's ransom to stay, there are going to be other institutions, those big schools such as your Clemson's, your Alabamas, Georgias, Oklahomas, etc., that is going to come in and swoop up those coaches because, hey, when it comes to the West Coast as well as the state of Louisiana, those are hotbeds as far as recruiting.
Yeah, so I think you've done a nice job of targeting 2 for sure there. I'm not that familiar with the 2 Texas A&M coaches that you're referring to, but you're basically claiming that they're top-notch recruiters. That's pretty much been their claim to fame.
Yes, sir. The gentleman, as far as what the newest assistant as far as A&M, he was a former, I think, a grad assistant at Georgia, and he left, I guess, around about, I'm just guesstimating maybe August or September, and he was one of the guys that was able to convince Devon Bowie as well as Bear, the big defensive lineman that eventually committed to Georgia this week, to decommit. And as far as just, hey, explore your options. And, hey, when it's all said and done, if you want to commit to Georgia, then commit to Georgia. But if not, you can easily state it, hey, that I explored, all options as far as recruiting. But I believe that when it's all said and done this year, Mark, is that because you're going to have, when Tucker moves to LSU, when Franklin moves, whether that's LSU or USC for that matter, or you're going to need as far as those guys that, hey, that already have those relationships. And that being the case, what's the best way to get relationships? Having those top-notch recruiters.
So as soon as you mentioned this Georgia-Texas A&M connection, now it's coming back to me, and I just looked it up, but it was coming back to me because we have a recruiting guy that comes on here from time to time. And, yeah, he spelled all that out. So I know who you're talking about now. His name's Nick Williams. Texas A&M went from Georgia. He was a player at Georgia, GA at Georgia, now goes to Texas A&M as an analyst. And, of course, Damian Craig was an accomplished quarterback at Auburn. But Corey Raymond, yes, he is an up-and-comer, and people are mighty impressed with Corey Raymond. He will have all sorts of opportunities and options. And Brian Hartline, the same thing at Ohio State. When you talk about a guy that, he was a Pro Bowl wide receiver with the Miami Dolphins, and now he's bringing in, practically it seems like every other top 5 wide receiver in the country. So he's shown he can recruit, and you already know he can teach the position. The same thing with Corey Raymond based on his playing career. So, yeah, I think you've nailed it when it comes to those 2, and I'm sure there's more out there. like them. But yeah, they would be two of the stars of the positional coaching ranks.
And I have to ask, as far as your opinion on this, Mark, it was in reference to how, and it's in regards to Dan Mullen, and it was as far as his interview, and I asked him as far as how he felt about recruiting. And he stated that we're not going to talk about recruiting yet. We're going to speak about recruiting after the season. And when I heard that, I almost ran off the road, went in the ditch. But besides that, it was in regard. The other thing that just kind of got me about it is someone made the statement later on was that he was not a good interviewer. And part of the reason why he's still there is that, hey, X's and O's, quarterback whisper, et cetera, et cetera. But it just blew me away that as far as you're a head coach, but you're not a good interviewer. And I'm just trying to figure out how in the world you're able to get a job at Mississippi State as well as University of Florida. You're not at bare minimum, a decent interviewer. So.
Yeah, you would think that the guy that gets the job, especially at Florida, pretty much has it all. Like, has basically no holes in his game. Yeah, Dan Mullen is an interesting type. He is an interesting guy, an interesting sort, and I would not want him running my football program.
I agree. And so in parting, I would just ask you this, Marcus. If we would go back, I guess maybe 3 or 4 months, who would have thunk it that of the 3 major schools in the state of Florida, Miami, and Florida State, that probably the first man walking on the first thing smoking would be Mullen?
Yeah, I hear you. It's making me think back on ranking these coaches, because actually I had Mullen as highly ranked as I ever did, actually prior to the season last year, in which he beat Georgia, won the SEC East, played Alabama closer than anybody else. I saw him building a program, taking over a program that won 4 games. So we'll give him some credit here. Took over Florida. They had won 4 games. Now, did they have better talent than a 4-win team? Obviously, yes, much better. But still, he took a 4-win program and 10-3 wins a New Year's Six Bowl. 11-2 wins a New Year's Six Bowl. The next year, to a certain extent, forget the record. They really ran into a buzzsaw with a number of good teams, but still, they win the SEC East. They beat Georgia. They go to a major bowl game, and everything should be great up to that point. But again, Georgia's the standard in the division, and you cannot recruit top 15 to 20 in the nation and keep up with Georgia. It's impossible. You just can't do it. And so his inability or lack of care for the recruiting side, I just don't know how he, as an intelligent human being, can reason that out. I understand not liking recruiting. I don't think I would like it either. But you have to determine, okay, I'm no longer at Mississippi State. I can no longer bring in the 35th class in the country and coach them up and go 7-5. I can't do that anymore. So I need to figure this out, and I'm just going to have to grin and bear it and recruit. And maybe, this isn't necessarily me being some kind of a genius. If I don't like recruiting, first of all, yeah, I'm going to have to do some things. In any job, you got to do things you don't like to do, first of all. Secondly, why not surround yourself with great recruiters?
Indeed. And one other thing I just would like to put out there, Mark, that's in regard to LSU, the aforementioned University of Florida, and I would say to a lesser degree, Michigan. I was almost, willing to give in to khaki for a moment. But then those decisions that were made as far as Saturday, it just made me just say, well, in the words of our, as far as one of the former NFL coaches that has gone on, they were who we thought they were, and that's the reason why I can't sign up as far as another year or so as far as Coach Khaki.
And I agree.
But when it comes to
when it comes to a result, not to cut you off, Kevin, because I just want to slide in here real quick, because I do want to give Michigan some credit. I want to give the players credit. That's a good football team. They're a good football team. They're not Alabama. They're not Georgia. They're a really good football team. They racked up 553 yards of total offense in that game. They played their hearts out. They just and it's not like the coaching staff's incompetent, but they got out coached. All right, sorry, Kevin. Keep going.
Oh no, and also in reference to this, could be the Alabama LSU game will have long-term ramifications more than just, quote, the game. And I mean it in the respect, what a difference a year makes. LSU had, when they played against Florida about this time last year, they had 60 players. Wow. This year, they have about 60 players. And it's also going to be a big recruiting weekend as far as in Tuscaloosa. Saying that to say this, and that is if Alabama can, during the French Revolution, off with their heads, they said, as far as Saturday, then this could be a death knell as far as recruiting as far as in the state of Louisiana. And also as far as you're aware, Miles Brennan is in the portal, Coy Moore is in the portal, a plethora of other guys that is in the transfer portal. And then also the key I would think across the nation, and especially as far as with your Blue Blood program, will be the 7 additional scholarships. And whether you're going to invest 7 additional scholarships in the transfer portal or 7 additional scholarships as far as your, quote, true freshmen. If LSU is not competitive Saturday, they're done. And going back as far as to your first caller, Mark, he who refuses to change is lost. And unless Dabo gets on board as far as, hey, I'm going to, even if it's a teaspoon of transfer portal kids, I have to change in order to keep up with the Joneses, Mark. And unless Clemson is willing to do that, Clemson is going to be, injuries notwithstanding this year, they're going to be behind at least a year, Mark.
And I really don't understand that stance by Dabo. And I generally like Dabo. He gets a lot of criticism, and I usually defend him. There have been a few times I've posted 3 or 4 videos that I know of where I've blasted him because I thought he was whining. But besides that, I generally like the guy, and I think he's genuine, but I don't understand the stance against the transfer portal. Maybe I get the, I don't like things to change, and this is a change, and it's a pain, and I don't think kids should be free agents. I get that it's a pain, and you think college football should be the way it was in 1980. I get all that, but get over it, and you got to get up with the times, and you got to utilize this is a tool to be utilized. And we see guys like Mel Tucker at Michigan State, even Greg Schiano to a lesser degree at Rutgers, at least turn a complete joke of a program into something that's at least capable on the field. So he's got to use it. Just flip on the Alabama game and watch Jamison Williams and Henry To'oTo'o, and you'll see that you can, yes, you don't want to build your program through it. You don't want to be dependent on it, but just look at the talent he's lost. You got to at least replace that talent. I don't get it.
Well, that's at least 2 of us then, Mark. At least 2 of us. Again, as always, a pleasure to speak with you. Always enjoy as far as the content. Take care, and hey, look forward to conversing with you soon.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Appreciate it. You have a good night.
Right.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP. Before we get started here, I want to let everyone know that we're going to be on the line. I believe that the ESPN College Football Rankings show starts at 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night, so we're all going to watch it together. And then, of course, I'll take your calls. So I'm almost certain I moved our Nebraska show and did that today. in anticipation of ESPN's 7 o'clock Eastern time. I looked it up and it said 7 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday. So we'll all be here live. We can watch the unveiling together. And then, of course, I'll take your calls. The real MVP. Go get him. What you got for me?
Well, I asked you about, I like your ranking for the most part. And your top 25, that actually makes sense. And if you haven't watched the video, go watch it, by the way. It's a great video.
Thanks for the plug. Yes.
No problem. Oklahoma. Why are they so high? Why are they 3? I mean, I called last week saying they were 2, and then you bumped them down to 3. They just have too many close wins for my liking to be that high.
Okay. And I know you understand this, but I just want to clarify for everybody else that because this is typically the approach that most people take, that let's say there's a situation where a team is number 10 in the country and they don't look impressive, but they win. So there's a couple teams behind them that look more impressive that obviously we're right behind them. So somebody may say, I'm going to knock them from 10 to 12. I don't do that. It may appear that I do that, but I don't do that. I reevaluate the whole thing every week. So just to clarify, I didn't basically say Michigan State won, Oklahoma didn't play a very good team. Michigan State did. I'm going to bump them up. It's an evaluation of the whole season and the entire and games that happened weeks ago. Who can we take that was a team that we had a high expectation of and a high evaluation of weeks ago? Let's say they got off to a 3 or 4-0 start, and now they're 4-3 or 4-4, or vice versa. Miami, I'm giving teams more credit for beating Miami today in the most recent top 25 that actually makes sense versus 2 weeks ago, because Miami's just beaten what are probably the 2 best teams in the conference. So just to clarify that. Okay, Oklahoma should be where, according to you?
I have them at 8.
8. Okay.
8.
Do you have them behind Cincinnati?
I have them even with. I have them one spot above Cincinnati.
Okay.
One spot above.
Do you have your top 8 there? Can you read them off?
I have Georgia. I had Alabama last week at 2, but I put Michigan State there. So Georgia 1, Michigan State 2, Alabama 3, Oregon 4, Ohio State 5, Michigan 6, and then Wake Forest 7.
Okay. And then Oklahoma 8. Okay. So I didn't hear, did I miss Cincinnati?
No, they're not.
9. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they're behind Oklahoma because they've had 2 weeks in a row where they struggled.
Well, I'm going to state the most obvious thing right out of the gate. You've got a number of 1-loss teams ahead of Oklahoma. And not that I don't rank 1-loss teams ahead of undefeated teams or 2-loss teams ahead of 1-loss teams, because I certainly do if I believe that the wins and losses and the performance on the field justify it. But in this case, let's take Michigan, for example. Okay, Michigan just played by far the best team that they've played this season. And as I believe I took this as an example on my video, I said, I evaluate that game much differently. Michigan losing in the last few seconds of the game and playing right down to the wire and actually outplaying Michigan State for about 3 quarters than if they would have lost that game 52-10. Obviously, my evaluation of Michigan would have been much less. So the performance on the field matters to me after the win or the loss. And number one, Oklahoma's not lost a game. Michigan's lost a game.
I understand that.
And then on top of that, if you look at Michigan's wins, the Wisconsin win is getting much better. So that win back in like week 3, week 4, Michigan beating Wisconsin has turned into a nice win. It's getting better and better for Michigan. But other than that, who have they really beaten that stacks up against Oklahoma's wins?
Well, honestly, they haven't. It hasn't been. It's close, but the thing that put them above was that Wisconsin win, because a lot of the schedule was similar, and it was at Wisconsin, which is a tough. And I know they lost to Michigan State, but still, they played so close to them. I can't bump them too far down.
Sure.
I'm not gonna. I understand listen. Alabama lost a game. I'm at 3. So I'm not going to just take, well, they lost, so they got to be below all the undefeated teams. It's not how it works, at least in my opinion. And plus, while I understand Michigan, go back. They have played. They've played similar teams and had similar results, like Nebraska, for example. They both played them, and they both won by 3. So they're similar teams. So I don't think it's too big of a gripe to have one over the other, but I just think Michigan has played better opponents and has looked better.
Well, I do think that they've played one team in Wisconsin that is probably better than anyone Oklahoma's played. Although if Texas and Wisconsin played tomorrow, I would favor Wisconsin, but not by a whole lot. So Oklahoma did beat Texas. And
but
again,
Texas is 4-4.
I understand they're
So
4-4. I understand they're
4-4,
4-4, but they also lost to, of course, they lost the game to Oklahoma. They lost to Oklahoma State in a razor close game. They lost to Baylor in a razor close game. I look at the records, but I also think, is Texas a quality team? Do I think Texas? We talk about teams all the time. You and I have the conversation about group of 5 teams that sneak into the top 25. Well, one of those teams is, I believe this week, Louisiana. Texas beat them by 20 points. Mm-hmm. Is Texas one of the top 25 teams in the country? Probably. They just happened to lose by 1 score to 3 teams that are all ranked in the top 15 in the country.
Well, if you're going by that logic, you can certainly make it not. I know this is a bit extreme, but Indiana. They're 2-5, and I know they're horrible and they haven't lost any close games.
Yeah,
but
Texas isn't losing 54-7.
Yeah, but people say they're horrible.
Or 24-0, or 34-6. Those are some Indiana scores. 34-6, 24-0, 54-7. Texas is losing games where they're outplaying teams for almost the entire game before blowing it. Texas is pretty good.
Well, I understand that, but at the end of the result, the thing that matters is the win and the loss. And Texas has a habit of blowing leads. And in the fourth quarter, I know they've outplayed them.
Whoa.
But you know
what did you
else
just say? What did you just say to real MVP? What did you, in the end, all that matters is the wins and losses. If we were talking about that, then we just put Oklahoma at number 2 or 3, right? They're undefeated.
Well, okay. I get what you mean, but let me rephrase it. There's a certain point where if you lose so many games, you have to take it into effect.
Sure.
Because if it happens one time, like Alabama, they lost a close game one time. It was an outlier result. We can toss it to the side. More than we can toss Texas losing 3 or 4 games by 1 score. Nebraska is a perfect example. They've lost 6 games by 1 possession. This is a repeated pattern for them. But nobody's claiming Nebraska. They're going to be a top 25 team. Because at a certain point, you look down, it's like, okay, they can't close.
Yeah, so Nebraska's played Oklahoma, Michigan State. So they played 3 really good teams. And then they played a couple pretty good teams, Minnesota, Purdue. But, and I know that they've been 1-score games, but I in no way would compare the way Nebraska has competed in those games, the way Texas has competed in. These games have been razor close. I'm sure a lot of people listening to us right now watched Oklahoma and Texas play.
Oh, that was an all-time great game. And Texas would have won them, but Caleb Williams came in and just stormed back.
And I do believe I stated on that video that that 2 through either 7 or 8 were razor close.
Yeah, you said that. You did say that. But it's just the thing I'm thinking. So they go on the road this week, Oklahoma, and they play Baylor. And Baylor, in my opinion, is their first legitimate test of the season. Baylor's a really good football team. They're under the radar. If they win this game, they're very likely to go into the Big 12 championship game. But if Oklahoma beats Baylor, are you going to have them in your rankings at 2, jumping over Michigan State?
So I have yet to look at this week's schedule. So you're telling me Oklahoma and Baylor play? Do they play this week? There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, sorry.
They play
It's
next
a bye
week.
week.
They got a bye week. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, Michigan State would have played. They got Purdue this week, which I understand Purdue's not quite Baylor, but I don't think that there's a huge difference there. So just because Oklahoma beats Baylor, I'm not going to jump them past Michigan State. Again, it's just another data point on the resume. And Michigan State's got, again, Purdue this week. And then I think on the 13th, Ohio State's coming up here soon. I don't know if it's that week or the week
20th.
after. Oh, okay. So it's going to be the next week. On the 13th, Michigan State must be playing Maryland. So that's not going to do a whole lot for them, but Maryland is 5-3. Hey, if we want to throw records out there, they are 5-3.
I mean, they're better than expected. They started out, they just fell on their face, though. They started all 4-0, and they got exposed by Ohio State as a pretender. They'll probably finish the year 7-5. So, I mean, that's not a bad season for Maryland fans out there. I mean, they're a decent team. They're not great. They're not good. They're just decent. So, other than that Oklahoma dispute that I probably will still continue to have, because you'll have them at 3 or 4 or 5. I'm very interested, by the way, to see where Oklahoma's ranked as much as it works.
Are you going to have this dispute with me if Oklahoma beats Baylor in 2 weeks?
No.
Well, you're not going to have much of a dispute, because either Oklahoma is going to beat Baylor and improve their resume, or they're going to lose to Baylor, and they're obviously going to drop in my rankings. I don't know how far.
No, I'm not. If they beat Baylor, that'll be their first quality, in my opinion, their first quality win of the season, and I'm not going to have a dispute. But for right now, I think they're a little too high. But other than that, let me ask you, Ohio State this week, they go on the road to play Nebraska. Is this a potential letdown spot for Ohio State? Not to lose, but to underperform.
Well, it's also fascinating because Nebraska's not gotten blown out by anybody. And sure, they haven't played anybody as good as Ohio State, except maybe Oklahoma, maybe to a lesser degree Michigan and Michigan State. So they've played 3 teams that somebody could argue are as good as Ohio State, and they've played them all within a score. And shoot, Nebraska outplayed Michigan State. So I would not be surprised if Ohio State won by 1 score and didn't look great, and Nebraska kept up this ridiculous run of losing to anybody in the world by 1 score. I made the comment a few weeks ago that you might as well put the Kansas City Chiefs and the UConn Huskies on Nebraska's schedule. They're going to lose to both of them by 1 score. But I'm going to make the prediction right now that one score loss streak will end Saturday. I don't think they're staying in that game. I think that they'll put up a fight. I don't think it's going to be 42-0 at halftime or anything like that. But, I think that that's going to be a 2-score game at half and going to stretch out to 45-24 or something like that.
I could see that. It's just because, though, by the way, I'm very surprised you Ohio State fans, not you in particular, Mark, but Ohio State fans stormed the field after beating Penn State. That was very surprising me. If you beat Michigan or something like that, I could get it. But Penn State,
it's a good win. It's a nice win, but it should be expected. Yeah, I didn't really get that myself. But then again, I'm not the storm the field kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm not that either. I'd get hurt, probably. So the playoff rankings, they come out tomorrow.
Yes.
7:00, be here, everybody. Also, make sure to like that video along with this video. And also, if you haven't, hit that red subscribe button to get more exclusive content about college football. No problem, man. You keep me on the phone, I don't keep plugging you.
Well, I do have to get to a few other people.
Okay, let me just ask this last question then. Last year, BYU, they dropped from like 10 to 18. Is there any team you can see taking a significant drop like that?
BYU dropped from 10 to 18. Are you talking about in my rankings or in the AP poll? Yeah.
AP poll had them at 10. College football playoff had them at 18 the first week. That was the stark difference. Is there any going to be stark differences as your prize?
So if we look at the AP poll right now and the coaches poll, you're asking me, is the College Football Playoff Committee going to have a team that's much differently ranked than those two polls?
Yes.
I'd have to look at the two polls first. You got to realize I don't even look at these polls very often. But let's see. So Cincinnati, well, there's your first one right there. They could have Cincinnati evaluated much differently. Now, of course, not 10 spots away. They could have them 5 spots different than number 2. I don't think the committee's going to be that overly impressed with Cincinnati winning the games that they've won. They're not like these pollsters who basically say, Notre Dame, okay, they beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's only lost 1 game, and so Cincinnati passed their test. Okay, as long as they go undefeated. I don't get this number 2 ranking for Cincinnati. They just played another pretty marginal game against a bad team last week. They were only up 2 points at halftime against Tulane. The week before, they didn't recover an onside kick with 45 seconds left, and Navy had the ball, a 1-win team with a chance to tie them or win the game.
Also 1 win.
I don't understand it. I don't get why Cincinnati's ranked ahead of Oklahoma. I don't understand it. If you just want to play the game, they've got the undefeated record, so place them ahead of Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. Okay, I can buy that. I don't totally agree with it. But Oklahoma and Michigan State, why is Cincinnati ranked ahead of them? You know why? They're ranked ahead of Michigan State because people are still having to catch up on Michigan State because Michigan State was unranked to start the season. What's so funny is if Michigan State started this season number 5 in the country before anybody played a game, and they played the exact same games, these 8 games that they've played to go 8-0, they wouldn't be ranked number 5 in the country right now. They'd be number 2 in the country.
If you flipped Ohio State and Michigan State, if you flip their helmets, they could be completely ranked differently.
Yeah.
So if Ohio State had Michigan State schedule win 8-0, they'd probably be fewer.
They'd be number 2 in the country. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, Ohio State would be number 2 in the country with Michigan, and they'd have number 1 votes. If Ohio State did exactly what Michigan State did this year. Yeah. And Michigan State, if they did what Ohio State did, they'd probably be more like 10.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about Wake Forest?
Well, I think their
10.
season starts this week. Really, they've done what they needed to do. The rest win has to be Virginia, which I had Virginia ranked up until this week. They are Minnesota, Purdue, somebody like that. They're pretty good. They're a top 35 or 40 team in the country. So that's Wake Forest's best win, right? They don't have a better win than that.
Yeah.
And actually, this Syracuse team's pretty good that they beat. Syracuse plays everybody close, and now they actually started winning some games. But that's it. And they beat Louisville. But Louisville, who are they? They're
marginal ACC team.
Yeah, they're Kansas State or any number of the whole ACC is basically in a bucket together, and a couple teams are going to just eke out a better record. So the season starts, and nobody's going to give them a whole lot of credit when they beat North Carolina, and that's somewhat justified because North Carolina, what are they done? They're not that good, but they're at least talented. They're capable. And I'm guessing Wake Forest, I haven't looked at the lines, but I'm guessing that they're an underdog at North Carolina. I could about guarantee that.
I can do that for you right now.
So their season's starting. Yep.
UTSA is going to be 16.
16?
Or you think they're going to be completely dropped off?
Yeah. They're going to be
they're 16 right now.
I don't think they're going to be that high. They just don't have the schedule to justify being ahead of teams like Baylor, Auburn, Pitt. Well, not Pitt anymore. Who am I thinking of? Wisconsin, Iowa. Those teams, Kentucky. Yeah, there's just too many good 6-2 teams.
And then Wake Forest is actually a 2-point favorite.
Okay.
Which is surprising. Coastal Carolina is number 21. Something that will never make sense. Shout out to Coastal, I guess.
If they were undefeated, yeah, maybe throw them a bone. I get it. It's funny how if a team like Coastal Carolina, and of course they had the rep coming off of last season, so they got the jump on the rankings this year. But most of the time, a group of 5 team like that in the Sun Belt Conference, if they're like 3-0, they're obviously not going to get ranked. But once they stretch it to like 7 or 8-0, even if those next 4 games that they played to get to 7 or 8-0 are all awful, they just suddenly, boom, decide they're ranked one week.
Well, if you want to talk about these rankings that don't make sense, Louisiana's ranked below them. And Louisiana lost to a better team.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'll let you take on other callers. Thank you for taking my call. And also, please like the video. Like the video, guys.
There we go. All right, man. Have a good night.
Show.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Of course, we announced a few minutes ago. We'll be here for the college football playoff selection show at 7 o'clock Eastern time, so we can all watch it together. Who's on the line?
Hello, Dave Walensky here.
Hey, Dave. How are you?
Doing good. My question for you is, well, not really a question, it's more of a statement. You can tell how poorly your conference is doing when their private school is on top of the conference. I'm basically talking about Wake Forest.
Yes, you are.
And the ACC. I mean, we went through this before. I always say this. The Pac-12. I mean, I know Stanford is a little bit more different than of a private school. They get a lot more athletic kids to come there. Northwestern. When Northwestern does well, that means the Big Ten is not doing all that well. And I mean, I'm not no disrespect to Pat Fitzgerald, but you know that's just the way I always feel about it, especially in the West. This year, I think the West is a lot better than it has been in previous years. At least more competitive. And the other thing I was going to say is when it comes to Cincinnati, I basically, you know, I think when SMU lost to Houston last week, that's going to hurt Cincinnati's chances to really maybe make a good playoff push. They needed SMU to win that game because they don't play Houston in the regular season. Now they might play Houston in the championship game, which most likely could happen. But if Houston's not ranked, it's not gonna help Cincinnati at all.
Sure. So Cincinnati's rooting interest has moved from SMU to Houston. They need Houston to go 11-1, and Houston, if they're 11-1, they're going to be ranked fairly high. I bet they're between 15 and 20, and they need to play Houston in the conference championship game.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't hurt if SMU won, obviously, the rest of its games and was in a 10-2 team that they beat as well.
Yeah, and they beat them. Let's say they beat them maybe twice because the way they do the conference championship. I think it's what the number 1 and number 2 will go at it, like the same as the Big 12 does.
Yeah. Well, I actually think it would be better for Cincinnati to beat each one of them instead of just beating SMU twice.
You know, just coming to think about it, shoot, when's the last time you talked about SMU and anything? It's been since like the Pony Express days.
Yeah. Craig James and Eric Dickerson.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I was a young kid when they had the death penalty happen to them, so I don't really remember that. But I watched that documentary from ESPN, which is a really good documentary about that whole entire situation. If anyone hasn't seen it yet. But yeah, and my other question I asked you yesterday: who do you think would fall or slip up if they had in the Big Ten West this week? Would you pick? You picked Minnesota to maybe lose to Illinois, and I kind of disagree with you.
Well, let's clarify. I did not say that Minnesota is going to slip up to Illinois. I said that in my estimation, they've got the highest probability of slipping up against the other team.
And I slightly disagree with you. I think Wisconsin would be the one that had the highest probability.
Can you really see
in my opinion,
Wisconsin losing to Rutgers?
You know, to be honest with you, you were talking about the comparisons of the. You were talking about like predictions to win and all that. How ESPN does that whole entire prediction, see how much of a chance they will have to win. I think they said They said for some reason they had Wisconsin like only 64% chance of winning and 34% chance for Rutgers to win, according to that ESPN prediction thing. So, you know, I don't think, I mean, I don't see Wisconsin losing the Rutgers at all either. But it's only I think Vegas only has them for 12. I think they have, for some reason, they don't have. I mean, must have no trust in Iowa's offense because they only have 12 points favored against Northwestern. And Northwestern, to me, other than their running back, my God, that team is going to have a lot of work, in the future. But I think Pat Fitzgerald will get, Pat Fitzgerald always finds a way to get whatever he has for his talent and build that up.
Yeah, well, like you say, Iowa's been so atrocious on offense. I would consider taking Northwestern in 12 points. That game's got 20-10 written all over it, something in that range.
Yeah. Minnesota is 14 points favored. They're coming against Illinois.
Minnesota just lost another running back. So they've lost 3 of them now. They just lost another one today.
Yeah, but I follow the Gophers. I'm a diehard Gopher fan. But those running backs they have now, the 2 freshmen that have filled in, are just amazing. I haven't seen 2 young running backs since Lawrence Maroney and Marion Barber were at Minnesota. So,
yep.
I mean, it is to me the next guy up, Williams, and I don't know how long he's going to be out for because I haven't heard the reports. But I am hoping it's not for the full entire season. But because you still need to he's still he's still a senior, and you still want someone with a little bit more maturity to also come in for plays and carry the ball on certain key downs. But gosh, I cannot wait for that Iowa game. I can tell you that, and I'm really trying not to jump the gun.
Yeah, don't jump the gun.
I hope we beat Illinois.
Don't do that because Illinois. That's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be an ugly game.
I agree, like the Penn State game.
Well, no, I'm not saying that Illinois is going to upset Minnesota. Just it's going to be. Look at the games Illinois plays. Man, look at this game against Rutgers this past weekend. And sure, Minnesota's got the ability to eventually blow them out, just like they did Northwestern this past weekend. It was kind of a slow grind of a blowout. It took a while because Minnesota's obviously going to run for 300 yards or something close to it, like they have been seemingly every week for about a month. Yeah, I'm going to have to think about those point spreads because I think they're all 3 right there, except for Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin, and of course they've got no killer offense. But good luck to you this weekend. I appreciate the phone call.
Okay, it's good to talk to you, and I'll enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right, let's keep it moving here. The voice of college football, who's on the line again, 13-5 against the spread on Patreon. So give me a look right there. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Yeah, who's up?
Mark, it's Andrew. How are you?
Andrew, I'm doing well. What's going on?
Hey, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about Cincinnati, and I was on board with Cincinnati, and I wanted to come on here and say that I may have been wrong because one of my main thing about them was that they were dominating inferior competition, and they've sort of failed to do that for a couple of weeks in a row now. And I'm really scratching my head about who is going to be, for me, in the 4th spot when the first rankings for the college football playoffs come out tomorrow, because I think that the committee is going to put Georgia at number 1 and then Oklahoma and Michigan State at 2 and 3. I don't know in what order, but for the fourth spot, I think the committee is going to have a difficult decision. I don't know if it's really going to matter in the long run. I mean, there is a lot of really good football that's going to be played down the stretch. Oklahoma is either going to prove itself or not in their last few games after their bye week, and the Big Ten East is going to battle it out, and we'll see who comes out there. But for this first week, I think that there are a number of teams, a lot of teams, that you can make a case for the fourth spot. The first is Cincinnati, being that they're undefeated, and they do have a big win on the road over a quality team. And then I don't think that Wake Forest would be in the fourth spot, but they're undefeated as well. I think they'll be higher than the AP poll has them in the committee's rankings, because the committee doesn't base their rankings off of So I think Wake Forest will be somewhere in the top 6 or 7. But for that fourth spot, you've got Alabama.
Can I stop you right there? You think Wake Forest is going to be in the top 6 or 7?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, I do not see the committee ranking Wake Forest ahead of, let's say, of course, Georgia, Cincinnati. We'll hold Cincinnati for a second. Georgia, Michigan State, Oklahoma. Then we've got Ohio State and Oregon. So we've got that 5. And you're saying at number 6? I guess it's possible. The Wake Forest schedule will eventually be better than Cincinnati's schedule, but it probably is not to date. It's a pretty close call, and Cincinnati obviously is the best win of the two teams.
Right. Well, yeah, I think Wake Forest is going to be what I really mean is that I think Wake Forest is going to be higher than they are in the AP. They're at 10 right now. I don't think the committee is going to keep. I think the committee is going to have them higher than 10. 6 and 7 is just my guess. I wouldn't be surprised if they were at 8. I don't think they're going to be lower than that, though.
I think that committee values quality wins, and they have basically none. Virginia is a borderline quality win. And let me just say this before you continue. I just think that Cincinnati is going to be the team that everybody needs to look at, because everybody else involved in this, except maybe Wake, controls their destiny. So regardless of what they're 3 or 5 in the first initial rankings in the top 4 or outside the top 4, they can control it. You know, if Oklahoma's 5, they can take care of that. If anyone, any of them, Michigan can take care of it, even with this loss last weekend. But Cincinnati, basically where the committee places Cincinnati, is going to tell us how much they value Cincinnati, because the resume is not going to get any better. It's only going to be slightly better, but in comparison to everybody else, it's going to plummet. So this is going to be fascinating where they play Cincinnati, because if we're holding them to consistency, then we need to really track Cincinnati, because if, let's say, they place Cincinnati in the top 4, well, they can justify Cincinnati holding a top 4 spot if they just continue to win. But it's really a weak justification unless Cincinnati's dominant. But at the same time, if, let's say, Cincinnati starts in the top 4, they can justify Ohio State, Oregon, all these teams passing Cincinnati. If they want to have Cincinnati be passed, they can certainly justify that, because there are going to be teams that are going to be racking up the kind of wins that justify passing Cincinnati over the next month.
I think of the teams that have a case to be number 4, Cincinnati's is going to be the one I would least expect to see in the initial 4 spot. If Cincinnati is going to make it into the top 4, at any point in the regular season. I think it's going to be because teams ranked ahead of them fall out. But I do think you can't rule them out 100% at this time. Did you say that you don't think that Wake Forest controls their own destiny, though?
There are a lot of people out there that think if Wake Forest goes undefeated, that they may not make the playoff. There are scenarios that we can concoct that an undefeated Wake Forest team would be a controversial choice or a difficult choice to make. Not by me. I will have Wake Forest in my playoff, in my top 4 rankings if they're an undefeated conference champion. But Georgia and Alabama can take up 2 spots very easily. And Oklahoma can be undefeated as the Big 12 champion. And either you want to throw Cincinnati or you want to throw Michigan State out as an undefeated. Let's take it easy. Let's go the easy route. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, Oklahoma. There's your 4 teams. Wake, you're out.
I'm not arguing that Wake Forest is anywhere near a top 4 team. I think that they do control their own destiny, however.
What happens under the scenario? I just laid out the scenario. What's the committee going to do with undefeated Michigan State, undefeated Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, with Alabama winning the SEC championship game? They are not going to elevate Wake past a 1-loss Georgia or Alabama team. They won't. Their schedule's not good enough. And we can even throw Cincinnati in there. We didn't even include them. So I don't think they completely control it. I hope they control it. Yeah, I want them to control it.
You've convinced me. I could see in that scenario Wake Forest getting left out. And it does make me a little sick to think about it.
You're right. It's not right.
At the end,
they'll even favor Ohio State over or Wake. A 1-loss Big Ten champion will get in over Wake. Most likely.
Yeah, I can see that. So going back to talking about the 4th spot, though, I think, honestly, at this point, you would probably have to put Oregon at number 4. You can make a really good case for Oregon, Cincinnati, Ohio State, Alabama, and even Michigan. And I appreciate the fact that you're talking about Michigan in a way that I don't think a lot of people are talking about Michigan fresh off the loss to Michigan State, because Michigan looked really good in that game. And I think that if they stuck with one quarterback, they probably could have won. I don't remember the name of the backup quarterback, but he came in and had trouble handling the ball, and then played in a series soon after. He had that trouble keeping a handle on the ball and turned it over, and that may have been a mistake on Jim Harbaugh's part to do that. But I thought Michigan, they were in East Lansing, and it's not like they were a massive favorite to win the game. And they played Michigan State close. They built a lead and they lost it, and that happened. But I'm not writing Michigan off by any stretch. But I heard a lot of talk in the the initial 48 hours after that game, talking about this is Michigan disappointing their fans again. Harbaugh not doing what he needs to do as a head coach yet again. But I think everything is ahead for Michigan, and I expect them to win against either Ohio State or Penn State, one of those 2 games, and they could potentially win both. I wouldn't be surprised if they won both. But in terms of the 4th spot, Oregon has a loss against Stanford, but they beat Ohio State. And I don't know how the committee would justify putting Ohio State above Oregon at this point in the season. And in terms of Alabama, they have a loss to a top 15 team, and their win against Miami is looking better as Miami starts to play better. But they had the Tennessee hung with them until the fourth quarter when they pulled away. The win at Florida, I don't know if people are remembering,
That's a good point.
was very close. And if Florida didn't miss an extra point on one of their earlier touchdown drives, that game very well could have gone to overtime. I don't know if Alabama has a strong case for number 4 at this point. If I'm trying to predict the number 4 spot, I think the 3 spots are easily going to be Georgia, Oklahoma, and Michigan State. And I think Oregon's going to take the 4th spot, at least in the first rankings that come out tomorrow.
Well, everything that you have stated makes sense, except we're forgetting one thing that the committee relies on, and they're very upfront about it, and it can't be measured, and that's eye test. And I think the eye test is partially an actual eye test, but I think it's also just a respect factor. I think they call it an eye test, and they say, well, we watch the games and evaluate the play, and it's an eye test. What it is more than that, it's you're Alabama. You've had a number 1 recruiting class almost every year, and you got the best coach in the history of the game and all that. You're Alabama. You get a couple extra points, or 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever the metric is. You just get a benefit of the doubt. And then there's the same consideration to a lesser extent given to fill in the blank, Ohio State, Clemson, whomever's involved that has that kind of brand name and it has built a reputation, which the reputation's earned, but the reputation should not factor into these evaluations. And it's pathetic and it's ridiculous, but it does.
I could see that argument when you're comparing Alabama or Oregon, but not Ohio State and Oregon because they've actually played each other. If Ohio State is ranked ahead of Oregon, I won't be able to justify it.
I agree with you. Will you be able to justify it if both teams conclude the season with 1 loss? Because Ohio State's resume is just going to continue to get better and better and better and better. And Oregon's is really just, the Pac-12 is just awful and it's a mess. And they're really not notching any more good wins. Even the championship game is not going to be against a team that's that good.
Yes, I'll be able to justify it if the season concludes and they both have 1 loss.
Oh, I agree with you.
And
but I'm saying that the committee is going to measure this resume.
It's not going to be Oregon's fault for, playing in a conference that just isn't as strong as the Big Ten and specifically the Big Ten East. Or Ohio State has an opportunity to win a lot of big games.
Well, you're right.
Oregon
it's not their fault, but it still has to be evaluated. It's not their fault, but it has to be evaluated. It's not Cincinnati's fault. If anything, Cincinnati went out and scheduled Notre Dame and Indiana. So they tried to do something about their situation, but their schedule still has to be evaluated.
I think in an evaluation where you're looking at an Ohio State with 1 loss to Oregon and an Oregon team with 1 loss to Stanford. If Ohio State's, if the wins for Ohio State would be against, top ranked competition, certainly multiple teams that are going to finish the season in the top 25, and Oregon is going to have 1 against Oregon State. I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
Oh, it is. The committee, they want Oregon or Ohio State to lose. They do not want to deal with that because there's no comparison between the resumes, but Oregon won the football game.
Right. And they won the game with some key players out.
Yes, on the road. There's a reason they got on a plane and traveled 3,000 miles. There should be a reason why they did that. Yeah,
Well, it'll
their
be
resume. Oh my goodness. And now we're looking at Washington, Washington State, Utah, and Oregon State. It's just.
Oregon. Well, here's the other thing. In order for Oregon to make its best case, they need Ohio State to keep winning. But I guess in the scenario that we're talking about, where they both go 12-1, what Oregon really needs is for Ohio State to win its regular season and then maybe lose in the Big Ten championship, or
Bingo.
lose another regular season game, but
Yeah.
extremely close to a highly ranked opponent. Maybe losing by 7 or less to Michigan State or something like that.
Sure.
But that's the thing. Oregon, it's a catch-22 for Oregon, because if Ohio State continues to win, they may pass them, but it continues to make their marquee win look good.
Well, even if Ohio State would have to collapse for that not to be just a ton of credit given to Oregon for winning that game. So yeah, your scenario works for Oregon. They need Ohio State out of the way to guarantee that they pass them in the rankings. And the best thing for them would probably be, the ideal thing would be a 1-point loss in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State's out. They're done. Yeah. But it's still, Ohio State's not going to suffer much from that. They'll still probably be the 8th or 9th ranked team in the country.
I'm really looking forward. I'm really looking forward to these last few weeks. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Oklahoma does, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Big Ten East shakes out. But thanks for talking to me, Mark.
I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football. But first of all, again, Patreon. You got your Voice of College Football community. Steve Merrill with his Under the Radar pick of the week from Wager Talk and Pro Sports Info. You get my picks. 13-5 against the spread last week. 107-69 against the spread this season. The money line is just under 80%. And we also have a little contest between 20 media members that you see here at the Voice of College Football on a regular basis. And we've got a 12-pack that we select the games each and every week. Welcome.
Hey, Mark, it's George. Hey, Mark, it's George. How
yes,
you doing?
It is. I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. As a preliminary, before we say anything about football, there's a guy named Exploring with Ben in the chat. You missed his super chat.
Oh, I hate to do that.
So let's just say, thank you, Exploring with Ben.
Thank you.
He's a good dude.
See if I can find it. Yes,
I have a kid named Ben, and I thought he was being a smart ass. So when I saw Exploring with Ben, I thought it was him being a shill, like just messing with me. And then I realized, no, that's not my kid. That's some other dude in Texas or something. But at first, I wasn't sure because he shares a name with my child,
I really don't understand how I ever miss these super chats. I meticulously go through this chat.
We don't care about that. We know it happens, man.
Yeah.
Hey, tell Jay Bird in the chat, he just said, ha, 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 George thought it was the sun. At first, I did for like a couple of days, and then I realized, nah, man, that ain't my kid messing with me.
What is going on tonight?
Pays attention. Can you believe people actually listen to a call and talk in the chat, and if you look in them both at the same time, and you can't be an hour behind, you always have to be current, always spinning forward, right? Otherwise, like, no one knows what you're talking about. That was 5 minutes ago, This is badass shit. Who invented this, man? This is great. Should we all write a thank you letter to Mark Zuckerberg or what?
What? Oh, let's not go down that path.
Right. And if we started talking about something serious, they would shut us all down tomorrow. We would never talk again. They're like, you can't talk about that on the internet.
I would love to come on here and talk about serious things. I would start another channel and talk about some real serious life-changing kind of issues that matter to people. But yeah, I probably wouldn't be on here for 3 days.
I feel bad. Everyone's going to say, "What did you do at the end of the world, George?" And I'm going to say, I was on social media, on football, college football channels, you know. But the truth of it is, it started by accident. Years ago, I was one of your first few hundred subscribers, you know.
Yes.
And Uncle Lou, oh my God, you should see the stuff Uncle Lou used to do when he was new and starting out. It was so fun with you guys. It's been like 4 years now or something. Y'all were getting to be mature grown-ups. But, well, you were always kind of a straight guy anyway.
Yes, I've always been a straight guy. Let's definitely state that. Yeah, George has been here a long, long time.
You would be Dean Martin, and I would be Jerry Lewis.
Yes, definitely.
But still, it appears people want.
Wonder how many people understand that reference.
Anyone over 60 or 50 or 45 at least. Nah, let's say 50. Oh my God, Jinker GM just said, "Have another beer, George," and that reminds me to get my beer out of the freezer. Thank you, Jinker. Jay Bird just said, "George is definitely Jerry Lewis." You know, Jerry Lewis is just a character. There's a serious individual behind that saying, "No, I want $12 million a year and a $5 million buyout." Yeah, that's just in front of the camera.
Yeah, of course,
right,
Jerry Lewis and
about
Dean Martin
football.
didn't talk for like 12 years off stage.
Right. Well, that's what they tell us. Who knows? I think it's all just written for TV. G Dog Forever said, "George, you were going to brag on the dogs. I was supposed to remind you." And I did not say that, but that's freaking hilarious. So let me take a minute to pontificate on the Georgia Bulldogs, Mark. Okay?
Okay.
These are my long-suffering Southeastern Conference brothers. We all like each other, all the fans. We don't bash each other in the head with bricks after the game. We don't flip each other's cars over. There really is no rudeness at the biggest cocktail party. This is great shit. And it's very serious. There's a lot of hatred there, but I think deep down inside we like. I've lived in both states for many years, so I'm cool with Georgia fans. So the best thing I can say about Georgia is this, Mark. If they don't win the national title this year, I'm going to hound them into oblivion. There's no excuse for this. No one's ever going to have a better defense. If their quarterback can just score 14 points a game, the defense is going to score 28. So they're probably good for 40.
It looks like it. That's the way it looks like it's going. But yeah, they're going to have the pressure of the world on them to get it done.
Can you believe how quick that happened? Before the Georgia game, the pressure of the world wasn't on them. But now everyone's like, how do you beat these guys? They just scored 21 points in 4 minutes or 2 minutes. No, wait, a minute 57, you know. All defensive touchdowns, except for that one beautiful pass to the end zone by Stetson Bennett the fourth.
And what plays into their favor, too, is normally they would have to go through an SEC championship game, which would be Alabama, most likely, and then 2 college football playoff games. But this year, they can lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game and then win the 2 college football playoff games and be good.
Oh, my God. I can't believe you just said that. Do you know what that means? Kirby Smart can start those young 5-star quarterbacks in that game, and the third string rest all his players.
Oh, he's not,
because it doesn't matter. But he could. Why wouldn't you let those guys get some practice? He doesn't. It doesn't matter.
It's not having them get practice against Alabama in the SEC championship game.
Hey, you know how players sit out of the bowl games? All the Georgia starters should say, "We're sitting out, coach. You want to fire us?" And they should let the second and third and fourth string play. Why risk it? Who cares? It's a meaningless game. They can lose. They're still going to the playoffs. I wouldn't put any of my starters in. Give them an extra week off. They don't need no practice, man. They're fine. They know the playbook. Just give them an extra week to rest.
You're actually right. They're not going to do that, but you're actually right.
I know I'm right.
You're right that they could do that.
And hey, I know I'm right. And what if Georgia beats them with their fourth string? How about that? Then what? Now it's scary.
It would be funny if Kirby Smart kind of put that in the committee's face to say, you know what? I know we're number one. We're number one by so much that, we're just going to rest our players against Alabama in the championship game because we're still going to be in the playoff and we'll be good.
Right. Well, it's just the truth. How could you leave them out? They got one loss and nobody else. They've had 46 points scored on them in like 8 games. You're like, come on, give me a break.
Plus, the SEC office should be getting on the phone to Kirby Smart saying, you know what? You need to blow this game because we won 2 teams in the playoffs.
Right. I can't wait for the Alabama-Florida game. Man, put everything up in big bold print. That's like
the Alabama-Florida
Alabama.
Game.
I meant Georgia, but it's not even guaranteed it's Alabama yet. You realize in the West they're still having a battle over there.
I tend to keep up with these things, George. I realize it.
But I'm thinking it'll be Alabama because that would just be the most epic. That would be like Ali versus Frazier in Zimbabwe or whatever. What was that? No. Ali versus
Zaire.
Foreman.
Yes.
Yeah, Zaire. Thank you.
The rope-a-dope.
Or Ali Frazier. Yeah. Do you know Frazier actually beat Ali once or twice?
Yes,
How many times was it?
I think Ali beat him 2 out of 3. Frazier beat him in 1971 in Madison Square Garden.
That is the best. I don't care if there's a little bit of Hollywood thrown there. That is the most just beautiful sports story ever, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Heavyweight boxing in the 70s.
Frazier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that was a serious, shorter guy. It was a good boxer in his own right and a bigger guy that was all flashy. That was some brutal boxing.
As they say, styles make boxing. And those two just were just completely different styles, different personalities. Yeah, Smokin' Joe was the first. I'm almost positive he was the first boxer to ever knock down Ali.
Yeah. God, it was just such a beautiful fight. Everybody should Google that and go watch that fight, Ali versus Frazier. It's just the best fun you can have.
Yeah, that's when I was into boxing.
And they fought 3 times. They were all equally as good.
Oh, they were great. Titanic.
Hey, people are going to wonder why I called. So I want to ask you a question. Is this deja vu? You know what deja vu is like? I just see that guy? Okay.
I'm familiar.
Today, I turn on my internet and it says NCAA sanctions Miami. They give him an official warning and a reprimand for cheating. Are you serious? After like 30 years, they can't even win a game and they're back in the shit box.
They couldn't get the headset rules, the communication lines.
I know.
Correct. I read that story.
I'm like, this is not aware of Mark, it's rule 1.4E or something like, where's your administrative assistant? Why aren't they paying attention? Who let that extra headphone onto the field?
Yeah, I would like to know exactly what they did. I found it very amusing that there was a specific number of communication devices that could be used. I believe the number was 23. I don't know who came up with the number 23. Can't have 24. 23 communication devices allowed.
Right. And? Oh my God. Oh my God, we just got cut off, or he hung up on me.
We've got a number of people. We've got a number of people commenting on the Ali Frazier fight and the Ali Foreman fight. Yes, the Rumble in the Jungle. That would be the Foreman fight, and then Ali Frazier, the final, the Thrill in Manila. Somebody check that one out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, well, I can barely hear anything now. It's like you're in a tunnel.
I have some questions to ask you about Mullen.
You asked me a question about Mullen?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about Dan Mullen?
Do you think this is a possible scenario a little while ago, he was diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer, and he just wants that payout for his family. He's doing everything he can to get fired. And then, it'll be announced later that he was sick and he passes away.
Yeah,
There's got to be some reason for this. Okay, but I'm just saying, doesn't it seem like he's trying to get fired, doing everything he can to get fired, lose to Kentucky, lose to LSU, embarrassing against Georgia? We've lost 6 out of 8 to Power 5 teams in a row. I mean, is there something else he can do for you? 0 recruiting? We got a 35th recruiting class.
He gets the buyout if he gets fired.
Right. He's going, what does it take to get fired?
Oh, all right, George. I'm going to wrap it up with these last 2 calls
No,
here.
no, wait. Somebody in the chat asked me to ask you, who do you think is a possible Heisman Trophy dark horse? And I would say number 99 for Georgia, just because it would make everybody happy. A nose guard won the Heisman. Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
Jordan Davis. There you go.
Jordan Davis.
A dark horse for the Heisman. Oh, Sam Hartman, quarterback, Wake Forest. There you go. He's a good one. All right, George. Appreciate it.
No.
Yeah.
Lou wants me to.
What?
Uncle Lou wants me to tell you every call doesn't have to be 45 minutes long. And listen, Mark, I don't mean to be rude, right? But I'm an old guy, right? Here's how you do it. While you're talking to somebody, you just say, okay, thank you for the call. You don't say goodbye. All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you for the call. All right. Exactly. I agree with Uncle Lou. I also agree with you, George. Every call does not need to be 45 minutes long. And these last 2 calls are going to be more like 45 seconds long. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. This is Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, hi. I'm just calling. I was a bit stunned yesterday by the news of Gary Patterson being relieved.
Yes.
At TCU. I mean, once he relieved, I tried to find a few things on this in my couple moments of leisure today, and I couldn't really find any clarity on what exactly happened there. And kind of blown away by it.
Well,
you know much of what happened in that?
Well, I don't know that there's anything there that's not football related. I read a few things. I think that basically Gary Patterson, I was going to start this show by kind of going through what he built at TCU, but we started getting calls immediately. So if anybody's unfamiliar with what Gary Patterson accomplished at TCU, and you got to take it into context beyond just being a head coach at a Power 5 school that was able to win, what he did in lifting it from Group of 5 status to the Power 5 is pretty remarkable. He did an outstanding job. I always had him ranked in the top 5 to 10 coaches in the country. But really I don't think that there's anything football related. It's that he's been a 500 coach for the last 50 games.
Okay, I mean,
this season has been
I
pretty
understand
awful.
that. Yeah, I mean, and I understand, making a change at some point. But I mean,
like they were not competitive against Kansas State Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've been fairly average in the Big 12, and then, honestly, I think given like their resources, people don't realize TCU's got like something like 3,500 students or something. It is a tiny school, and its athletic budget is minuscule compared to the rest of the schools they're competing against. I think being average is, I think like they're in over their heads a little bit being in that league. And for someone to have done what he has done there, and to be shown the door, not even allowed to finish the season, I mean that just seems completely wrong.
Well, wait a minute. He was allowed to finish the season. What? It was his decision not to finish the season.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes it a little bit better, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was sad to see it because I mean he's a no-brainer college football Hall of Famer. and what he did at TCU was pretty remarkable. And
yep. Well, it was my intent to certainly cover it and post a video giving him some kind of recognition, but I just did not have time today. All right, sir.
Very understandable.
Well, thank you for the call.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Take care, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. The final call of the night. Will it be the best call of the night? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. This is JJ from Idaho.
JJ from Idaho. Boise State fan,
Yeah,
right?
how you doing? Actually, I'm a Washington State Cougar fan.
Oh, nice.
And
picked up a big win.
People don't love to talk about the Cougs, but here's my question. Cougs just had a good win over ASU. They have a bye week. They go to Oregon, and they play Arizona and Washington. Is there any chance they could win the Pac-12 North if they went out? I mean,
okay.
Any chance on that?
Okay. You're talking to somebody.
And thank you for all you do, because you're awesome, by the way.
Well, I
really
appreciate that.
So
It's very nice of you. I will tell you that most seasons, and certainly over the course of Washington State football history, I've been about as locked in on Washington State as anybody that doesn't have a vested interest in Washington State football. So I usually know the personnel, the quarterback, everybody, the playmakers, the whole deal, certainly during Mike Leach's era. But I got to say, what have I seen out of Washington State this year? Not a heck of a whole lot. So the Arizona State game, I recorded it, but I didn't get around to watching it. And I got to say, I was pretty surprised at the what you had jumped out like 28-0 in that game, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and they were. I think it was an 87% chance they would lose.
Yes, I noted that at the beginning of the show because I was going through the FPI saying I was like astonished that was 87%. I get Arizona State a favorite at home, 65% maybe. Right. But yeah, I got to say, since the Utah loss, beat Cal by 15, beat Oregon State by a touchdown. Obviously, that was a pivotal game in the division standings. Beat Stanford by a field goal, barely lost to BYU. And beat Arizona State. So that's 4 out of 5. And so coming down the stretch, wow. Bye week going to Oregon, Arizona at Washington. Well, it obviously rides on this Oregon game.
Right. Yeah. And of course, we have all the coaching with the Rolovich thing, all that.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
So it's crazy year, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm excited for them. You never know, but they seem inspired lately, so who knows?
Well, I know Ohio State fans are going to be rooting for you.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, to see Washington State advance to a Rose Bowl, that would be phenomenal. I would love that. Yeah, I was eyeing more Oregon State a few weeks ago. Certainly at that point they had gotten off to a better start than Washington State, but they seem to be the dark horse team. But obviously you took them out head to head. So yeah, I would say that your chances are, I think you've got a 25 or 30% chance of getting it done because, there is the possibility that you beat Oregon, and you're going to be a favorite in those other 2 games, but not a substantial one.
Right.
Arizona played within a touchdown of USC Saturday.
Right. Yeah. Pac-12 is weird. Well, hopefully the Huskies and Oregon play this weekend, I believe, and hopefully they beat up on each other, and then the Cougs get a bye.
Yeah.
Who knows what will happen? But yeah. So anyway, appreciate you. You're awesome. Thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you so much. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate it. This was very nice to take this call as the final call tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
All right. That should do it. It's nice to get some compliments on the final call of the night. Actually, all the calls. Nobody really jumped on me tonight. So appreciate that. Uncle Lou in the chat tonight. Boy, we were honored tonight. Uncle Lou kicking in with the super chat. Appreciate that. Kicking in with the super chats just so he could be heard on the comment made here. Every call does not need to be 45 minutes long. think they're more in the 15-minute range, but I get the point. I get the point. So what we would like to do here is be able to have a conversation with fans, but kind of limit it to not extending to the boring dragging on phone calls. So I will master that a little bit better to allow everybody with a nice conversation and for us to exchange thoughts on college football, but keep it moving at the same time. So I appreciate everybody on the line, and you guys are amazing. I will be, let's see, tomorrow, my schedule tomorrow. If you want to hear about Dan Mullen, I got to record with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. So that video is going to be released sometime tomorrow or Wednesday. So we're going to tear up the Dan Mullen situation. My schedule tomorrow, between records and live streams tomorrow. Let's see. Tomorrow we start out with, we do a Texas record at 11, Florida record at 11:30, Clemson record at noon, NC State at 12:30. Then we go into our Miami live. So Miami fans and everybody else that wants to check us out on the Miami channel at about 1:15 Eastern time tomorrow. Then right after that, I've got Mississippi State. Then, of course, I record with Steve Dace on Michigan podcast at 3:15. Then we got USC football talk at 4, Iowa live at 5:30, and then we're going to be here for the college football playoff rankings at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I will take your calls right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here. Check out the videos, of course. Subscribe. Check out the team channels. If there are any team channels under 1,000 subs, please subscribe. That's a key figure here on YouTube. Appreciate it so much. We will see you guys on Tuesday.